thank you so much for having me. I am in Washington at the Schilling Cider brewery, which is really exciting. Would you call it a brewery?
Cidery.
Cidery. Okay.
We don't make any beer here.
Okay, got it. Okay, yeah, of course. That makes a lot of sense. So I'm Jenny Morgan. I work for Tradewater, and you all have been partnering with us for a few years now. So I'm just honored to be here and hear a bit about your experience being the founder and CEO. And you've been in that role since 2013. Can you tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, so I'm Colin Schilling, co-founder and CEO of Schilling Cider. I've been in the role, I guess you'd say, since 2012.
Okay.
So we sold our first product in 2013, but it was an idea between a college friend of mine, Mark Horney, who's sitting over there. We had a hike in November of 2012, and we said, hey, do you hate your corporate job as much as I hate mine? Why don't we start a cider company? And then by February of the following year, we had our permits, federal and state. And then by April, we were selling cider in 2 states. And I have an MBA, so does Mark. That's how we met. But my focus is specifically in entrepreneurship and sustainability. And so I do believe that business can be a major driver and force for good if it's applied in the proper way. And so from the very beginning of our company, sustainability has always been a core pillar for us. And in the very early days, that looked like cans. So we said, hey, how do we package cider more sustainably? How do we grow a company more sustainably? And at the time, everyone was doing glass bottles. No one was doing cans of cider. We were the first ones to do that. And if you look at the carbon footprint on cans specifically, glass bottles have about 7 times the carbon footprint versus cans. And here in the Pac Northwest, we've got pretty high recycling rates. It can always be better, which we're doing some lobbying on. But it's a very quick turn from recycling back to new aluminum cans again. So I know that's more than you wanted, but that's kind of how we thought about sustainability as we were founding the company.
Well, that brings me, do you think that that's critical when you're starting a business and you want it to be purpose-driven? Do you think that it needs to come from the very first conversation so that it's organically in the culture?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and I've actually pondered that a lot because for us, we have 2 pillars now that are kind of in adjacent spaces, but really the same mindset. One is sustainability, but one is company culture and how we treat our people. And unfortunately, I wouldn't say that we built the company culture piece in. We were MBAs, so you have to forgive us for our daftness on that front. Sustainability has always been, and I think it's very core to the company. In about 2016, we pivoted and say we want to be a people-first company, and we're going to do everything to basically course correct. And that was an enormous amount of work, and now we've gotten there. But I would say that you can do either. So if you're a company that hasn't been founded sustainably, you can absolutely make that shift, but it's going to be a lot of work. Yeah. It's going to be a big transition. It's going to be a big culture shift. The rewards are absolutely worth it, in my opinion. But as a company who built sustainability in from the very beginning, it was just always something we thought about. So it was a little bit simpler to continue to grow and scale and have that be a core pillar. So I think either is my answer to that question, but one is certainly less friction causing than the other. If you can build something like that in from the beginning, it's going to be easier and better and more ingrained with the culture.
From 2013 being the first launch of the product and then now being in 2026, how has sustainable thinking scaled as you all have grown? Like what has changed in the way that you're coming at the climate impact that you all are having?
Yeah, it's a great question. Somewhere we put together this beautiful timeline of kind of, the milestones of each year. And I think that's how we think about it is anytime we're looking to scale up, we want quality to become better. We obviously are price sensitive, in terms of how do we grow and make things more efficient and waste less. But in that same ethos, it's saying, hey, how can we be a more sustainable company as we scale the business? And so quite frankly, as you get bigger, you can afford to do more things. You can project a different image, to the public in a different way, in a larger way. And so that's really how we looked at, the climate neutral, approaching climate neutral. When we were super small, we couldn't have even afforded the time or the space to calculate that, right? Mm-hmm. So we started calculating our carbon footprint voluntarily in 2021, but we didn't make any claims until 2024. And so it was a lot of work to make sure that we were doing it authentically, we were doing it correctly. And so every year we've added something substantial into our, I would say, portfolio of things that we do that's sustainably minded. And every decision that we make, we always make sure that we're not doing something counter to that. So the prime example in cans is there is a major problem with people putting wraps and stickers on cans, and it makes cans not recyclable. Hard stop. There's a lot of kind of false information out there about that, a lot of greenwashing about that, but the reality is we've talked to the companies that actually do the recycling, actually take the metal and melt it down, and it causes major problems if these cans are wrapped or stickered. And oftentimes, wrapped and stickered cans are directed back to the landfill versus being recycled, which then means that the recycled content of cans is lower percentage recycled and drives the carbon footprint through the roof. We do not use that even for our small production stuff. And not only that, but we have used our position as an industry leader to shift more and more people away from doing that into better alternatives. So that's one way that we've not only committed to it for our own company, but also then leveraged our size to help drive others into the more sustainable direction.
That leads me to two questions. I want to know what happened in 2021 to make you decide to voluntarily start measuring your emissions, and then was that a learning that you got from calculating? Like, did the data tell you ways that you could improve, or were you already privy to some of that knowledge and then you were just improving after the fact? Like, which came first?
Honestly, that's a good question that I can't quite remember, but I would say it's really driven by passion. And for me, primarily, I mean, I'm the driver of this for our company for sure, although most people that work here are sustainably minded and really love that we focus on this, as do our consumers. But I think at the end of the day, 2021, we had the bandwidth and we had the abilities to start doing it. So like I talked about, we're always looking forward and saying, hey, what things can we do that is a more sustainable model for what we're doing today? And I would say that measuring the carbon footprint became something that was feasible, and we knew we wanted to do something with it once we really got our heads around it. But you can't just jump into something like making a claim on a package without doing all the homework beforehand. And we also got connected with a person who was able to do it with us, who was an intern, so it was relatively affordable. And then again, we scaled that up as the business scaled to using professional consultants working with you directly, kind of moving the legitimacy farther and not making any claims, not doing any greenwashing until we knew it was fully legitimate.
Yeah, I love that you're not placing some sort of standard that you've invented in your mind. Like, you're really walking towards everything that makes the most sense for how to be most impactful and then what makes the most sense for the brand at the time. Yeah. And so embracing the fact that you can come with passion and you can start from the ground floor with all of these sustainable measures, but then you're integrating some of these different things into it. I love that, just because I think that's what intimidates a lot of brands when they're trying to emulate some of the things that you all have done. They feel a bit overwhelmed, like It's not capable. How do you keep that confidence?
I think one of the things that drives me is that we are a leader in the space, and what really encourages me is that when business is a force for good, it's not just one business like ours making changes. It's how do you synergize that across the entire industry or beyond. So if we can put extra work in, lead by example, I will absolutely hand off our entire playbook on sustainability to anyone and everyone that wants it so that they can change their business as well. That's where real impact comes from. It's not from one company changing, it's from an entire industry changing, as you well know. But that's really where the impact comes from. I think the other thing that really drove my excitement around doing this work is I just had a suspicion that because hard cider is literally grown on trees, that it would be lower carbon footprint than any other bev alc, and it is. Mm-hmm. So that's also a really exciting story to tell, because most of our consumers that gravitate towards cider give a shit about sustainability. Yeah. And so yes, we want to do what's right for the planet, but we also want to grow our business, right? I'm one of those rare people who think that capitalism and sustainability can go hand in hand, mm-hmm. and I'm proving that through our business. And so we absolutely want to sell more product. We absolutely want to grow our company. And so I thought it was also a good way to do that, of saying like, hey, if I can prove that cider is actually the lowest carbon footprint type of alcohol you can drink, how can I leverage that into selling more cider and then shifting people from higher carbon beverages over to ours? Yeah,
I love that. The integration piece of being able to be profitable and purposeful at the same time is, once a brand really understands that, it's just so much growth in the most positive way. So I love that. A lot of organizations, when they are approaching their sustainability efforts and their goals, are thinking about just the four walls. What made you all go outside of that? Rather than just solely decarbonizing your own brand, what made you want to go invest into projects outside of Schilling?
You're talking about specifically carbon credits?
Sure, yeah.
For us to make claims, carbon neutral claims on packaging, like I said, it has to be fully legitimate. And our operation, we manufacture, our distributors use diesel trucks to ship product, our grocery store partners, obviously pay for electricity to keep things refrigerated. We can never get to a point where our own operations are so negative in terms of carbon footprint that it would offset all those other partners in our value chain. And so the way to get to zero, to neutrality, is obviously to purchase credits, which is basically paying for projects that are reducing carbon in some substantial and verified way. And obviously we wanted to pick things that I was passionate about, or our company was passionate about. And specifically what y'all do with refrigeration destruction really struck a chord, because our industry uses a lot of refrigerants. Mm-hmm. And we have shifted our own internal refrigerants to much, much lower carbon footprint options, and continue to look for options. But as you well know, there are some legacy refrigerants out there that are some of the gnarliest greenhouse gases. And if those are not destructed, the work that y'all do, they are permanently released to the environment, and there is no going back. It's not like CO2 where you can plant trees. This stuff is out there permanently. And the other piece, the orphaned oil and gas wells, I'm just a bit of a nerd. And this stuff has always been annoying to me, that we as a country have drilled all these wells and then abandoned them across places like Texas, California, Oklahoma, and they continue to spew enormous amounts of methane every day. And the government is not funding projects. No one else is going to fund these projects unless companies like ours work with companies like yours to fund those projects. So it's a bit of a passion project. And I love the fact that those projects are located in the U.S., mm-hmm. Where we operate as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of overlap with superpollutant mitigation and the food and beverage sector. And so we're thrilled that you all have been supporting this work for many years. What got you to Tradewater? Like you mentioned being a sustainability nerd, how did you become aware of orphaned wells and how ozone depleting substances need to be destroyed?
Sometimes I do so many things that I honestly forget the origins. I'm just really excited about the fact that we're doing it. But you guys actually were already working with some folks within the cider industry, so there was an introduction there. And then our intern, actually, I had him go out and do a project, and I said, hey, I want the combination of the very highest quality credits that are also still in the price range where we can afford them. Like, as you know, there are nonprofits out there that are doing direct carbon sequestration. You could be over $1,000 a credit, things like that. That's just not feasible for us to get down to those neutrality claims. And so price was important, and you guys are in the very competitive space on that, and you're doing extremely legitimate work. The fact that you're local here in Washington also helps a ton. Yeah. We like working with people that we can put a face to the name to, and other people that kind of share our passion. Yeah. So I would say it was a combination of those many things from what I can remember.
Yeah, I love that. I became aware of Tradewater from a podcast, and then I started reading about it in Project Drawdown. And so it's humorous how we all kind of come along the journey in various ways, but then we all end up kind of getting really passionate about a specific project based on how it has a local impact or it has a huge atmospheric impact and can really help curb climate change. So I love to hear how people kind of their origin story. Okay, so we were highlighting before how you all have carbon neutral or climate neutral products, and the Excelsior Imperial Apple was one, and then now we have the Excelsior Imperial Mango. So tell me a little bit about, I know through our partnership we were able to get these two products to be climate neutral, and so what are you doing now? Like, how are you growing your neutrality as a brand?
Yeah, great question. And I think I want to go into a little bit of the history of that because it's really cool. Yeah. So like I said, in 2021, we started doing voluntary carbon assessments so we could really understand the footprint of cider in general, and then obviously specifically our ciders. And what we found is that the CO2 footprint of a can of Schilling Cider was about half that of the best industry standard for beer. So if you're drinking cider, you're already cutting your carbon footprint substantially versus basically any other bev alc category that we could find research on. And so then the partnership with y'all was saying, hey, okay, we have about a little over 250 grams of carbon footprint associated with a given can of Schilling. We're going to work with Tradewater to offset that down to zero. And in fact, we offset 105%, so we're slightly below zero just to be safe. And then Excelsior Imperial Apple was the first ever climate neutral cider in the US. And then we extended that to Imperial Mango, Excelsior Imperial Mango next. And I'm super excited to announce that now the entire company, so that's every cider we make, every draft product we make, everything that we do, that's the big announcement for Earth Month this year during our Keep It Wild campaign. And we partner with the Climate Label for that certification, right, which we're really excited about. And I know Tradewater also partners with these folks. They're great.
Yeah. So you have this big announcement for Earth Month, but then it's April, and there's also the Keep It Wild campaign. And I'd love to learn more about its origin and how it's grown.
Yeah. So you asked earlier how you think about sustainability, and sustainability can take a lot of different metrics. Obviously, you and I are both very focused, you so even more than I, very focused on climate, but we're also focused on other things that we feel like fall in the space that are important to us, important to our consumers. And so April, our Keep It Wild campaign, it really focuses on helping keep wild spaces wild. And the way that we do that is we take our top selling SKUs, this one included Mango, Excelsior, Imperial Apple. I said that wrong. Excelsior, Imperial Mango, there we go. And we're giving 5% back on this and a number of other SKUs, and it's unlimited. So again, there's no fine print. It's 5% of what we sell in that month. So over the last 3 years, we have donated over $250,000 to nonprofits that focus on keeping wild spaces wild and do amazing work in those spaces. Here in Washington, we partner with Washington Wild. Oregon, we partner with Oregon Wild. And then we have a number of other nonprofits across over 10 states that we work with. This year, we're expecting to raise well north of $100,000 again. So that's really, really cool and really impactful. And last year, just to shout out the impact from this, so last year for both Oregon Wild and Washington Wild, we were the largest corporate donor, which is both awesome and embarrassing for other companies.
Right.
But we're super stoked to say that we're putting our money where our mouth is, and we're actually doing really substantial, significant work in this space.
The fact that you all talk about what's going on inside the four walls, but then also the things that are going on around the community is vital, just because I think that if we operate in a place of silence, no one knows what anyone is doing. And even if it's the best practices and the most well-intentioned and highly impactful, if it's done silently, then no one actually knows where we stand. And so the fact that you all are loud and proud and hungry for knowledge and wanting to collaborate is just such a learning opportunity for all of us.
Can I tell you one more thing I'm really excited about? All right,
yes.
cool. I got to give a shout out here because this was my idea and the marketing team graciously let me get away with it. But if you look at this package, there is a scan to win. So if you go to the stores and find a Mango pack, you can scan, and we are actually giving away a Chevy Bolt EV. Cool. And there's a couple different reasons why it's a Chevy Bolt EV. One, we have the largest and only fully electric fleet in the BevOut game in the US. And we have a number of Chevy Bolts. And so we're actually giving away one of our lowest miles, lightly used ones, because we don't want to go buy something new for an Earth Month campaign, right? But also, we're giving our consumers an opportunity to win a free car. I mean, hard stop. How cool is that? Yeah. Not to mention it's an EV, so it perfectly aligns with our Keep It Wild month and our ethos in general as a company, and really gives the opportunity for someone who probably is driving a gas car today to not pay for $7, $8 a gallon gas, and to substantially lower their own carbon footprint. So we're super stoked on that, and it really aligns with what you said before around how do we get loud and proud around this and generate a lot of buzz for this campaign. Because at the end of the day, what we really want to support is a focus on sustainability throughout the month of April and highlight that to consumers that we, Schilling Cider, are very sustainably minded, and you should vote with your dollar, buy more of our product, of course, if you agree with that, but also encourage other companies to do the same and really move the needle forward in this space.
Yeah. I mean, again, you're highlighting the intersection of so many things where it's community, it's your customer, it's your brand, it's the climate, it's the on the ground, it's the nonprofits. So there's just so much that's blended into all of these initiatives, which is really exciting. You mentioned wanting to share this with some of your, other allies in other sectors, but then also those that are in the food and beverage sector. Why do you feel like the whole sector needs to rise? Like, why reach across and help others that are technically your competitor?
I don't see sustainability practices as competition. I see it as a necessity. Hard stop. Yeah. I would like there to be a planet for the future generations. Hard stop.
Right.
And so we all need to do as much as we can do immediately. The fact that it's a marketing benefit is actually my way to push other companies to give a shit that otherwise wouldn't. And so if you kind of look at like the sustainability adoption curve, there's us, the early adopters, that spend more money, spend more effort, spend more time, like really proving out that you can do this. And then there's kind of those mid-range adopters, which is what we're trying to accelerate the rush into, which is, Schilling Cider is crushing us because they're doing really good job at the intersection of sustainability and marketing, and consumers are rewarding them with their voting with their dollars for that. I better follow suit. We want that, right? We want those people to come in because then it makes the entire industry more sustainable. And then you have the end of the curve, which is people that won't do it until there's regulation. And once we get 50+% of people focused on this space, then we can move to the next level, which is lobbying for regulation. which we're actually doing. We helped propose a bill this year in Washington to put together a recycling deposit on cans like Oregon has, because even though cans are very sustainable and recyclable, our recycling rates in Washington are pathetic. And the best way to move that forward from the data is to put a deposit on every can. And so you would pay 10 cents a deposit on the can, and then you get that back when you return those cans like Oregon does.
Not to put you on the spot, but do you know why aluminum has a challenge in the state of Washington? Is it because of those labels that a lot of brands are placing on the cans, or do you know where's the break?
Sadly, it's not a Washington problem, it's a United States problem.
Okay.
Every state that doesn't have a deposit on cans has pathetically low recycling rates compared to our European counterparts.
Right.
And so that deposit program is the most effective way in the United States to move the needle on recycling rates for aluminum cans. And, there are problems in recycling in general,
right.
Plastic especially, with China not purchasing recycling anymore, has very low recycling rates, but aluminum and metal, like a soup can, highly valuable. So there's no excuse to not be recycling these products. We just need some sort of motivation to do it. So again, you put me up on a pedestal here, so I get to talk about my sustainability passions and reasons for that. But your original question on why it matters and why I would share this is because I want everyone doing this, and we will continue to lead and push progress forward. So literally any company in the food and bev space, please reach out. We're happy to share the playbook. We're happy to make connections. We do want to see more and more companies adopt these practices. And that's how I think, capitalism can be a force for good. Sadly, it oftentimes isn't, but there is a model for that for sure.
If a food and beverage brand did reach out for this playbook, what would you advise be their first step forward?
I actually have a lot of these conversations, and it really depends on where they're at, like in terms of the size of the company, where they want to focus. Because at the end of the day, if the founder, owner, or operators of that company have a certain passion, then you're going to get better bang for your buck with that. If you're really passionate about, fishing and you really want to focus on keeping streams clean, then your main focus might not be on something in a different country that's moving, right? Like you focus where your passions are, because I think there's better value there. But also, at a certain size of company, it unlocks more and more things, which is why I'm really excited about Schilling Cider's growth. As we continue to grow, we get to unlock more and more pathways to be more and more sustainable. So just like with quality and just like with scale, anytime we get larger, I want to be able to do more. So how do we actually use growth as a force for good versus the opposite?
Yeah. You're debunking a lot of misconceptions about just how we operate in the business world too. Like, competition isn't a reality in sustainability. We're all supporting the ability for capital to go towards our products. And then also perfection. You're highlighting that it's not about perfection. It's always about progress. No one is ever going to reach the point where they're done. Right. It's always going to be a learning opportunity of what more we can do. So what does that mean for Schilling Cider? You've done so much. So what's your next dream?
Well, I'm looking at the marketing folks here, are going to give me a small chastising for always talking too much and giving away secrets. But one thing I'm super excited about is that we have used this climate label certification to be able to pay for things in the future that otherwise would have an ROI that would extend past when it would be a normally reasonable thing to invest in. And so we are going to be purchasing this year, starting the purchase of a carbon capture system at our own facility. So we will actually be capturing carbon. We will be turning that into liquid beverage gas. And so the beverage gas that will go into our ciders will actually have been captured from the air within our own facility, which is huge. There's no other cidery that's doing this in the US that I'm aware of. And in addition to that, we're expecting to actually make more than we think we'll need. So we're going to be able to sell carbon neutral beverage gas back to other local craft suppliers. And that actually diverts the need for this beverage gas to be produced at refineries, which is where it's currently coming from for basically the entire beverage industry. So we will basically be producing carbon neutral CO2 is the punchline of that, which is pretty cool. And the only way that we'd be able to justify that is through the climate label and our work around climate in general, to be able to say, hey, the payback for this might be 10 years if you're just running the numbers, but it's 3 years if you consider the marketing impact. Yeah. And how consumers will appreciate the work that we're doing and ideally purchase more of our product. So, of course, I'll turn and look at y'all out there. The best way to support this work in the cider industry is to buy more Schilling Cider and tell all your friends about it. So there's my sales pitch.
Yeah. And that gets you a pass from the marketing team, so you're good now.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
we'll see. I get yelled at a lot.
Yeah, well, we all do. Anyone that's as passionate as I can feel from you is going to get yelled at sometimes. So that passion, I do just have a personal question. Does that passion, where does that come from? Do you think that's something that you were just born with?
It's a good question. If you knew my middle name, you might have an idea of my upbringing, which is Muir, after John Muir, which would indicate that my parents were hippies, which is absolutely true.
Yeah.
So I grew up in the woods, 160 acres. That's actually how I got into cider. We had some apple trees on the property. My parents have been making small batch cider since the 70s, and we camped a lot, we hiked a lot, we did a lot of outdoor activities. So I think I've always just had, an innate appreciation for nature and kind of the intersection of that and humanity and business. I have a passion for business, but I also love being outdoors. And so I think for me, it's about preserving that and improving it in the way that I can, but knowing that, the world does live on food and beverage and other consumer products. It's not that we're just going to hide under a rock and not have these things. It's just an unrealistic expectation. So how do we do both, and how do we do both as best as possible? And I'm in the privileged position of running a company, and my partner and I have full control. It's not like we're beholden to a bunch of big investors or some mega corporation. So we get to do these things, even if they don't always pencil out because it's the right thing to do. But usually they do pencil out. That's the cool thing about it.
Yeah, I love that. So based on your work, you've proven that there's this intersection of sustainability and quality and growth, and that is all possible, and they actually support and complement each other. And to summarize, you are encouraging others to understand their emissions and their greenhouse gas inventory, to find partners like the Climate Label, like Tradewater, that can help continue the efforts outside of the four walls of the buildings, sharing with others on what you're doing and how you can collaborate, and finding ways to excite and inspire your customers, employees, and your vendors. Is there anything else that you would want to share for those that are seeking your guidance or wanting to find the next thing?
I would say if you're an entrepreneur or a business owner, you should look at your state's programs. Here in Washington State, that's partly how we switched the fleet over to the EV fleet, is there were some pretty lucrative incentives to do that. And so definitely look at what your state is offering. Sometimes look at what the federal government is offering and use those programs. I know a lot of folks in the cider industry have also done an amazing job of grant writing. So there is money out there to do this, even if you think it's impossible. And oftentimes it can really help move the ball forward. So that's something that I've mainly directed towards other people, other cideries, other business owners that have reached out, because oftentimes they forget to look. And it actually can be a really big, impactful way to move forward more quickly than you otherwise thought you could.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. And then for some of the people in the audience that are simply watching this because they want to know where to get a cider that's also tasty and good for the planet. And
my favorite people watching.
Yeah. Where can they find you? And then also, where can they get access to winning this car or help contribute?
All great questions. If you live in the Pac Northwest, you can find our ciders pretty much at anywhere alcohol is sold. Beyond that, go to our website, and we've got a product finder. So you can punch in your area code. It'll pop up all the locations where you can buy our product down to the SKU level. In terms of entering the giveaway, you got to go find an Excelsior Imperial Mango pack and scan the code. Okay. No purchase necessary, but that's how you get a link to the website where you can do that, which we're super excited about. This is going to be open for a few more months.
And we can follow you on the socials and find out more.
Yep, Schilling Cider at all your Instagram, Facebook, etc. Definitely give us a like and follow, and we give away a lot of stuff. Honestly, yeah. We love it. So we've given away trips to cool places, experiences, a car, mariners, sounders, all that kind of stuff. So people that we partner with. So definitely give us a like and follow, and we're also just super fun. Not only do we get to be sustainable, but we're an alcohol at the end of the day. Yeah. So we get to bring joy and bring fun at our best. And so our brand is just cool and fun.
That's what it's all about. I think that when you stop and have a conversation with those that are really passionate about what they're doing, but then they also see the impacts of it and want to be a part of it, they want to get their hands dirty and get more knowledge and get more attention, but then also get more ways that they can extend themselves. I think that it's really invigorating. So yeah, I guess my point to those that are maybe interested in walking towards, finding ways to make a better impact, is that it should come with that lightness and that levity and that, pursuit for the next thing. It's exciting. It shouldn't be a burden. It should be, something that pushes you to the next level. So
Yeah.
I love that. You can literally feel that here. So.
Well, if you want to live the brand, go grab a 6-pack, enter to win our car giveaway, and then reach out to a friend you haven't talked to for a while and have a couple ciders with them in person. Put the phone away, connect with a friend you haven't seen for a while, and do it over a Schilling Cider, which, by the way, has a neutral climate impact.
Great. I'm going to do that tonight.
Hell yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks
It
for
was
having
so
me on.
nice.
Super fun to chat.
Yeah, thank you.